What if I told you there are foods you can buy once, store properly, and still use months, years, or even decades later? Not every food lasts forever, and a lot of survival food content online is full of exaggeration. But there are definitely foods with extremely long shelf lives, and some of them are probably already in your kitchen. Today, I'm going to break down 30 foods that are genuinely worth stockpiling, what makes them last, and which ones are the closest thing to never expiring. And stay till the end, because the last few items are the ones most people completely forget about, but they can be some of the most useful in a real emergency. When people hear stockpile food, they usually think of bunkers, doomsday prepping, or some extreme survival setup. But the truth is much simpler. Stockpiling food is just smart planning. It can help during inflation, supply shortages, power cuts, emergencies, travel disruptions, or even just busy weeks when you don't want to cook from scratch. The key is not to buy random stuff and shove it in a cupboard. The key is to choose foods that are stable, affordable, useful in many recipes, and easy to store safely. Also, one important thing, very few foods truly last forever in every condition. Even long-lasting foods can spoil if they're exposed to heat, moisture, air, or pests. So this is not about fantasy claims. This is about real foods with real shelf life potential. Let's start with the closest thing to forever, salt. Plain salt does not spoil in the usual sense. It's a mineral, not something that goes bad like fresh food. If it stays dry and clean, it can last for an extremely long time. That said, flavored salts or salt mixes may contain additives that reduce shelf life. So plain salt is the one you want for storage. Salt is useful not just for seasoning, but also for food preservation and older style cooking methods. Sugar is another classic stockpile item. White sugar, if kept dry, can last for years and years. It doesn't support microbial growth easily because it has very little moisture. The only real problem is clumping when humidity gets in. So if you store sugar in an airtight container in a cool, dry place, it remains highly usable for a very long time. Brown sugar is less ideal for long-term storage because of its moisture content. Honey is famous for a reason. Pure honey is one of the best long-term foods you can store. Archaeologists have even found honey that remained usable after incredibly long periods when sealed well. Why does it last so long? Because honey has low moisture, high sugar concentration, and natural properties that make it hard for microbes to grow. The main thing to know is this: honey may crystallize over time, but that does not mean it is spoiled. Crystallized honey can usually be gently warmed back into liquid form. White rice is one of the most practical stockpile foods in the world. It's cheap, versatile, filling, and can be stored for a long time when kept dry and protected from pests. Compared with brown rice, white rice lasts much longer because it has the outer oil-rich layer removed. That oil is what makes brown rice go rancid faster. So if your goal is long-term storage, white rice is usually the better choice. Dried beans are another excellent storage food. They can last a long time, but there's one catch. As beans age, they may take longer to cook and become harder, so they may still be safe, but less convenient. That's why for stockpiling, beans are great, but it's smart to rotate them and not let them sit forever untouched. They're cheap, high in protein, and extremely useful for basic meals. Lentils are one of the best beans and legumes options for storage. They cook faster than many other dried beans, which makes them very practical in real life. They also store well when dry and sealed. If you want to stockpile food that's both nutritious and easy to actually use, lentils are a strong choice. Dry pasta lasts a long time when stored properly. It's simple, inexpensive, and very useful because you can pair it with canned food, sauce, oil, or spices. The biggest threats to pasta are humidity and insects. So if you keep it sealed and dry, it can stay usable for a long time. Oats are another underrated storage food. Rolled oats and similar dry oats can last quite a while if protected from moisture and heat. They're useful for breakfast, baking, and even savory recipes. They also give you a fast meal option, which matters in emergencies. White flour has a reasonable shelf life, though not as long as sugar or salt. Its longevity depends a lot on temperature and storage conditions. Whole wheat flour lasts less time because the natural oils in the bran and germ can go rancid. So if the question is long-term stockpiling, white flour is the better option. Baking soda is another item people often forget. It's not exactly a food by itself, but it's a crucial kitchen staple. It can last a very long time if stored dry and sealed. Why does it matter? Because it helps with baking, cleaning, and even some cooking uses. In a practical pantry, this is one of those small items that becomes surprisingly important. Plain vinegar is highly stable. Its acidity makes it resistant to spoilage, and it's useful for cooking, pickling, and cleaning. Over time, some vinegars may change slightly in flavor or appearance, but they are generally very shelf-stable. That makes vinegar a smart pantry item. Soy sauce also stores fairly well because of its salt content and fermentation. Once opened, it still lasts a good amount of time if refrigerated or kept properly. It may slowly lose quality over time, but it's a useful flavor booster in any long-term pantry. Ghee is especially relevant if you're in India because it's widely used, familiar, and practical. It has a longer shelf life than regular butter because most of the water and milk solids have been removed. That said, Ghee can still go rancid over time, especially if exposed to heat, light, or contamination. So it's long-lasting, but not magical. Store it sealed, cool, and dry. Canned beans are convenient because they're already cooked. They don't last as long as dry beans, but they're much easier to use in an emergency because they need little or no preparation. If your goal is readiness, canned beans make sense. If your goal is maximum shelf life, dry beans are usually better. Canned vegetables are very practical for building a food reserve. They're ready to eat, nutrient-dense, and useful in soups, curries, and mixed dishes. Like all canned goods, the key is to store them properly and check for damaged cans. If a can is swollen, leaking, rusted badly, or damaged, don't use it. Canned tomatoes are one of the best pantry items ever invented. They work in pasta, soups, stews, curries, and sauces. They're also one of those ingredients that make cheap food taste much better. For stockpiling, they're incredibly useful because they are versatile and easy to combine with rice, pasta, lentils, or beans. Canned fish like tuna, sardines, or similar products can be a strong source of protein. They are convenient, compact, and useful in many meals. The flavor may change over long storage, but they are one of the best protein-based pantry items for emergencies. Peanut butter is calorie-dense and very satisfying. It doesn't last forever, especially after opening, but unopened jars can stay good for a good amount of time depending on storage conditions. It's also practical because it gives both energy and fat, which are valuable in emergency food planning. Powdered milk is useful when you need shelf-stable dairy. It doesn't behave like fresh milk, but it can be stored much longer and used in cooking, tea, coffee, or baking. If stored correctly, it's one of the most useful long-term pantry items. Instant noodles are not the most nutritious long-term solution, but they are cheap, easy, and fast. They're useful for short-term emergencies or as part of a larger pantry. That said, they should not be treated as a complete stockpile solution. They're more of a convenience food than a survival cornerstone. Cornstarch is great for thickening soups, sauces, and gravies. It lasts a long time if stored dry and sealed. It may not be the first thing people think about when storing food, but it can make a simple meal much better. Dry or powdered sauce mixes can help turn plain staples into meals. These mixes don't usually last forever, but they can stay usable for a long time if stored well. A good stockpile isn't only about calories, it's also about making food edible and enjoyable. Dehydrated vegetables are light, compact, and useful. They can last a long time if kept away from moisture. They're especially good for soups, noodles, and rice dishes. In a long-term pantry, these can add nutrition and variety without taking much space. Dried herbs and spices are often overlooked. They won't stay potent forever, but they can last a long time and make simple food much more satisfying. If you're eating basic staples like rice, beans, and lentils, herbs can keep meals from feeling repetitive. Spices are essential in a practical stockpile. Again, they may lose strength over time, but they do not become useless overnight. Turmeric, cumin, chili powder, coriander powder, pepper, and similar items can make a huge difference in making simple food taste good. In real life, this matters more than people realize. Tea stores well in dry conditions and is valuable because it gives comfort, routine, and a little normalcy. That might sound minor, but in a long-term storage situation, comfort matters too. If it's sealed from moisture and odors, tea can remain useful for a long time. Coffee, especially in sealed dry forms, can also be stored for a long time. The flavor and aroma may decline over time, but it remains a useful pantry item. For many people, coffee is not just a drink, it's part of daily functioning. Dry milk powder deserves a separate mention from powdered milk, because some forms are better suited for long-term storage than others. Dry milk powder is especially useful if you want a backup source for beverages, baking, or cooking. As with all powdered foods, moisture control is everything. Chickpeas are incredibly useful. They can be stored dry for a long time, and they're a major ingredient in many cuisines. You can make curry, hummus, soups, roasted snacks, or add them to rice dishes. They are one of the best all-round legumes to stockpile. Finally, preserved foods like pickles can be very useful because the preservation process helps extend shelf life. In many kitchens, pickles are not just a side item. They can completely change the taste of a basic meal. Just make sure they are properly sealed and stored. Now let's clear up the biggest myth. Very few foods are truly forever foods in every real-world condition. What people usually mean is that they last a very long time. They are stable when stored properly, and they remain usable far beyond normal fresh foods. Salt, sugar, and honey are among the closest to this idea. But even then, storage matters. If they absorb moisture, get contaminated, or are stored in bad conditions, quality can drop. So the real answer is not what never expires. The real answer is what lasts longest and stays useful. If you want to stockpile food properly, follow these basics. Keep food in airtight containers. Store in a cool, dry place. Protect from sunlight. Keep away from pests. Rotate older stock first. Label everything with the purchase date. Avoid storing near heat sources or damp walls. This matters as much as the food itself. A great food stored badly can fail. A simple food stored properly can last a very long time. So yes, there are definitely foods worth stockpiling, and some of them last far longer than most people expect. The best long-lasting foods are usually simple: salt, sugar, honey, white rice, dried beans, lentils, pasta, oats, vinegar, canned goods, and ghee. But the smartest stockpile is not just about survival. It's about building a pantry that is practical, affordable, and actually usable in daily life. Because in the end, the best emergency food is not the one that sounds dramatic. It's the one you can store safely, eat comfortably, and rely on when you need it. So the next time someone says, "Food expires too fast to stockpile," you'll know that's only half the story. The real question is not whether food can last. The real question is whether you know which foods to choose and how to store them the right way.